Hailing frequencies open. Welcome to Trek Retrek, episode 1.
Woo, woo.
Technically on Paramount, this is episode 2 of Star Trek, but we'll
Yeah.
cover that later. This is the
Mhm.
first. This is the man trap,
It is the man trap.
and
Trapping
it
all the men.
is in this episode. Dr. McCoy discovers his old flame is not what she seems after crew members begin dying from a sudden lack of salt in their bodies.
Ooh.
That's the summary. That's what's on
That's
IMDb.
it. That's
That's
all that
it.
happens.
We're
End of
done. Wrap it up.
show. We're done. That's it. If you didn't watch our intro video, I have not seen any Star Trek. He has seen everything.
Yeah.
And we're going episode by episode, movie by movie, talking it out, comparing, our two very different perspectives on Star Trek, and, starting off strong with trapping all the men in this one.
I suppose we should say I'm your captain. I'm Johnny.
I'm Kayla. I'm already forgetting what my assignment is.
Your current
My
rank is
rank.
ensign because you have only seen
My
the
rank is ensign.
Kelvinverse movies.
I have only seen the new Star Trek Chris Pine JJ movies, Kelvinverse, as we learned in the intro video.
Yeah, so if you want to know more about where we each come from and our relationship with Star Trek, go watch that video.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the channel. I'm not going to do the thing where people point to a box and
No, we don't need to do that.
So this is the first episode of Star Trek that ever aired on television.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting choice.
Yeah, we went right into it. Honestly, there was some parts that I was just like, ooh, this would definitely not work today. But then there was some parts that I was like, okay, like a little bit ahead of its time. I could see that. And this is what I was going to mention to you before, but I was like, oh, I'll wait for the show. But like, I knew it was on air a long time ago. I did not realize it was in the 60s. I think I was thinking like 70s. But for some reason, I just didn't know it was that long ago.
Yeah.
But I was like, wow, this was literally almost 60 years ago. But yeah, I was just like, okay, I could see. It is a very, I don't know. It's a very interesting way to start off, but it definitely throws you into the world. Like, it doesn't really give you
Mhm.
any background or history or anything like that. Like, there's not really any kind of character development, that much at least. It really just throws you in and it's like, this is a serialized show. This is how each week is gonna go. Like, they're gonna have some kind of problem, they're gonna have to solve it, they're exploring new worlds. Um,
Are they going to
but
check out
yeah.
the beat while the DJ revolves it?
Yeah. But yeah, it was interesting because I was just like, I liked the concept of this creature ensnaring all of these men, and shape shifting essentially, which was very interesting what it decided to shapeshift into, but we can get more into that later.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was just like, it didn't surprise me that much, but I think I was expecting like a little bit more world building or character development than what we got, but I don't know, at the same time, since it is a very like serialized show, maybe not so much.
And it's a different time, a much different time for television. I don't think you could air the first episode of your show as just here's people doing stuff like without like
Yeah.
there's like very very light on establishing who these people are, where they come from, and I'm sure that's going to
Mhm.
come in later episodes, but to just this is the first thing they ever air is wild to me. Like
Yeah.
you couldn't start your show with an episode like this today.
No. No, no. Definitely not. Although there was that one show, was it Kaleidoscope or something like that on Netflix, that like you could watch it in all different orders.
I don't
I
know if
don't know
I'm
if you know what I'm
familiar with that
talking
one.
about. I think Giancarlo Esposito was in it.
I don't know. I don't
No,
know it.
still not ringing a
No.
bell. Mm.
So we can, and I have some facts for later about why this was the pilot episode or premiere
Ooh,
episode.
yeah,
Um,
I'm very
but
curious.
we have not really talked about. We both watched it like a week ago and have
Hmm.
avoided talking about it uh, until now because we wanted to have
Yeah.
our first reactions to each other's perspective here. So, what
Yep.
did you talked a little bit about uh, your thoughts,
Sorry.
but what do you think of the episode?
I liked it. Honestly, kind of liked being thrown into the world, and luckily, I already have a little bit of knowledge, so that helped a bit. Um, but yeah, I thought it was good. It was definitely like choppy at some points, and then got a little repetitive here and there. But like, I know, I think I had a little bit of everything, a little bit of like humor, romance, mystery, intrigue, drama, horror in a way.
Ish, yeah, a little
Ish.
bit.
As much as effects back then can give you scary creatures.
Yeah, there were some interesting transitions for the shape shifting. Like they obviously worked with what they had, and I think it did work. Like it's
Yeah.
you're obviously not going to get like what you can get today in effects, but they
No.
did pretty well with the two people standing in the same place and fading to make it look like one person was turning into
Yes.
another.
I did like that. I did like that fading with the creature. Um, I mean, did they ever say exactly what kind of creature it was, or were they just labeled creature, right?
I think the technical term is the M113 creature because that was the
Um,
planet that it was from, but it is well
Oh.
referred to in the fandom as the salt vampire. Like that's what it is. It's a salt vampire. Um,
Ooh, I love that. Salt vampire. That's
yeah,
cool.
with its
That's
with its
cool.
hands instead of its like it's got that big open mouth, but it uses its its hands.
Yeah, I was wondering how it did it, and then when it was putting its fingers on, yeah, Kirk's face,
Yeah,
I was like, "Okay, that's, like, a weird way to, like, caress the face, like, okay, what's gonna happen now?" I was like, "Oh, it's using its fingers," and that was, like, the red modeling, as they called it,
yeah, the
like, the
hickeys.
red spots, yeah. Hickeys all over the face. Clearly didn't get the memo that is not a thing past, 12.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that was funny. Yeah, I think I did pretty well with the effects. Um,
there was one shot when the salt vampire is in the quarters with McCoy and they show McCoy on the bed and the camera starts panning around and for a couple seconds it's just on that gray wall and then
mhm,
it's obvious there even looking at it because I've watched all these episodes before but watching it now with the intent to come on here and talk about it I'm watching it
mhm.
with a different eye like
Yeah.
there was still an obvious cut in that panning over the wall to where they go to
Yeah.
the door and there's McCoy again, but it's the creature this time.
Yeah. It was funny because I noticed that too right away, but I think the only reason why I noticed it is because I listened to the Office Ladies podcast, and they, you know, have all these behind the scenes of The Office, and one of the things they talk about for the long shots that they do is, like, they'll do a shot like that where they'll show, an inanimate object, like something that's still, as, like, the focal point, and then when they, to, like, what's the word? To put shots together, splice them together? Yeah, splice them together. So I kinda knew to look for that sort of thing, but I don't think I would have known that, before, but also it was very slow. It was like a very slow
It
rotation,
was a
and I
really
was like,
slow pan.
"Why is this taking so long?" Like, I don't think they needed to make it that
No.
slow. It was just kinda funny. Um, but yeah, and then Yeah, I mean, they were luckily able to get away with, just, like, all of a sudden, she's a new person now. So it kind of worked to their advantage that they didn't have to show all those transitions, but yeah.
Um, I think it's a watchable episode. I had watched it like 3 times over this past week and wasn't like, oh my god, I have to watch this again. Um,
Yeah, I
it's
watched
it's
it
a
3 times as well.
it's a pretty typical now in the '60s. I'm not sure because everything's inspired by something else. Like, uh, it's a pretty typical for today. There's a creature among us, and we got to figure out who the
Yeah,
imposter is. Uh, but
especially shape-shifting. Shape-shifting,
yeah.
'cause, yeah, I've watched so many sci-fi things, um, especially in Supernatural, like, shapeshifters are such a big thing, in
Mhm.
all different kinds. I think in any kind of, like, sci-fi fantasy, there's some kind of shapeshifter.
I have a lot of notes about weird stuff that I noticed. Uh,
Go for it.
the captain's log is Stardate 1513.1. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know if they've established exactly how star dates work. We still don't really know how star dates work. They're kind of mysterious as to what makes them decide how to make. In later series there was a formula to them. I don't know if they put that much thought into it here. Um,
Mm.
there were some serious heels on those boots that the the crew was wearing. Like even Kirk, Spock, and McCoy,
Really?
they had like a chunky heel on those boots. I don't
Chonky.
know why I noticed that, but I
I
did.
did not notice that. No. I feel like if I go back and watch it, I'm gonna have to
You're gonna see
look
it
for that.
now. Um, everyone in this was really sweaty when they were on the planet. Everyone was really sweaty except for
Yeah.
Nancy. And I don't know if that was intentional. Like, she's obviously not sweating. Like, Kirk's face is covered in sweat. McCoy's brow is glistening. Uh, Dr. Crater is soaked, but Nancy, no sweat on her. And I don't know if that was intentional, as really like, because that was another
I
interesting
feel like
thing.
it must have been intentional.
It was another interesting thing with the captain's log at the beginning. Like, they set it up right there. They're like, when we landed, we didn't know that there was a creature essentially like down
Yeah,
there that was
they
going to be
didn't.
killing people. I thought that was an interesting way to go about it, like letting the audience in on the fact that she was not who she appeared to be right away.
Yeah. Yeah, which I it was funny because at first when McCoy saw her and he was like, "Oh, like, we dated," which of course I was like, "You look 30 years older than her, like, that's weird." Um, not to yuck anyone's yum, but that's a lot of years. Sorry, I'm a little sick. But then when Kirk saw her and she looked older, I was like, "Oh, maybe it's just, like, weird lighting and, like, kind of making her look gray, but, like, I think she's gray." But then when she was blonde, I was
Yeah.
like, "Alright, what's going on here?" And I thought it was I forget what it was in something sci-fi fantasy where it's like you look different to each person, and so I thought it was something like that. I didn't realize she was shape-shifting, which I guess that she technically was, because there's no way she could change, but she still change I don't know. That's what I was gonna
there's
ask about. I was like, she's a shapeshifter, but she can also appear differently to different people at the same time.
Yeah, there's a telepathic aspect to it too, and we see that
Mm,
with the creature and Ahura in the hallway. When
yes.
Ahora's like, "Do I know you?" and it's like, "You were thinking about someone just like me," but the other people are seeing, at least from what we can tell, the other people are seeing the same person. Like when it's masquerading as McCoy, like everybody's obviously seeing McCoy. So maybe we don't have
Mhm.
enough information. It might be something it can control, whether it
Yeah.
just looks like a particular person or if it's projecting the image of the person the people around it want to see.
Mhm.
I
I
don't
don't
know that we've
know.
ever been.
It's confusing, that's for sure. It's not a cut and dry shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Which is kinda cool that, it's not that way, and that's how it is right off the bat with the show. But I don't know how that works, and I'm not gonna try to think about it too much. Just like with time travel, like, I can only think about it so much before my brain starts to hurt.
Um, William Shatner was a handsome dude. Like I wrote that
Um,
down.
yes. And I knew that. I think my real not real first movie I had really seen him in, and it was like, okay, like William Shatner was Miss Congeniality.
It's been so long since I've seen that. Uh, I'm used to like, because for the majority of my life, Shatner's been like Boston Public Shatner, like little
Mm,
pudgy. His hair's kind of
yeah,
curly. Like
yeah,
this is not the same dude.
yeah. And I remember, I don't know, at some point, maybe in high school or something, and I realized, who he was. I think when the first JJ Star Trek came out, I think that's when I realized that he was Captain Kirk, and I saw pictures. I was like, "Excuse me, what?" And what happened to you? Because like two look like two totally different people. Like I can kind of see it, but like even the voice kind of changes a bit over time. Um, yeah,
That's
but he can get it.
I can see
That
why
is
he
for
was
sure.
Kirk. Um,
Yeah,
I think I said Boston. I can't. I said Boston Public. It might have been
Boston
Boston
PD,
Legal. I don't remember
Boston
which.
Legal. Yes, Boston Legal.
uh, One of
I
those.
don't know.
Correct me in the comments.
I'm sure
Um,
someone will correct us.
other
Boston
little
something.
other little things I noticed that we don't need to spend too much time on. I was amused that they kept referring to what I assume is the sick bay where Dr. McCoy is as dispensary. Because you say dispensary these days, and I just think of marijuana.
Oh my god, I don't think I even really thought about that too much. That's really funny.
Um,
Yeah, because that's what I would think of too, but for some reason in my mind, I did not think of it while watching it. I
there
watched it
was
3
a
times.
there was a point on the bridge where he's got, I'm assuming, a coffee in his hand or a drink of some sort, and I'm like, is that just a styrofoam cup that they spray painted gray? Like it looked like that the first time I looked at it. I don't think it
Oh,
was. On the later
no.
viewings, I was looking at it closer. It just looked like a really weird paper cup. It was like
Oh, I
gray
wonder.
with a black line around the middle of it. But it was the
They're
'60s.
like, "This'll do."
That they probably just grabbed what they could.
You know, at
Um,
least it wasn't a Starbucks cup. Game of
yeah,
Thrones had all the money in the world. And didn't they do a water bottle in one episode? Like a plastic water bottle in like the next episode?
I don't recall. Um,
Oh, it was bad. It was real bad.
Along
But yeah, I
similar
think my
lines,
favorite.
go
Oh,
ahead.
are you gonna talk about the plant,
No, I was
the
gonna say
hand
along
puppet
before we
plant?
talk about the plant. Yeah, the sleeping pills looked like they were just red hots in the jar.
Oh no,
I'm pretty
I
sure
don't
they
think
were
I was
just
looking that
candy.
closely. But that's great.
But
I love those.
yeah, the plant was very obviously, like you said, uh, a hand puppet. It looked good, but
Yeah.
there was like, and again, it's the '60s.
I think, also the quality of, the television
Yeah,
screen was not that great, so they could get away with it back then, whereas now
yeah.
it's like, that is a hand. That is 100% a hand.
Which that's something I don't think we talked about this. We might have mentioned it. That's something to note. Like the visual effects, like the shots of the planets and the ship in space, those are all CG. They remastered this a number of years ago.
Oh, okay.
They upscaled the film because the show itself was shot on 35 millimeter film. So like all the actors stuff, they
Oh,
rescanned all those film negatives and upscaled them to 1080p, and then they
okay.
redid the visual effects as CG. Originally, it would have been,
Hmm.
physical models and whatnot, but
Mhm.
those were typically done straight to video, and they don't upscale as well. So they remade
Yeah.
all the visual effects shots in this. So you're seeing a little bit of both worlds:
Interesting.
the original film from the '60s, and then the upscaled CG effects for ships and space scenes.
Part of both worlds. I'm not gonna actually sing because I cannot sing.
uh, the only other thing I have written down that I haven't covered is I don't think Ahura's earrings are regulation. They're these big
I
green,
love how
neon
you
green
notice these
loops.
things.
I
I mean,
typically don't.
hoops.
That's the funny thing. Like when I watch stuff, I typically don't notice this stuff. But going through and
Yeah.
watching this with a different perspective, like to talk about it, um, I don't know. For some
I
reason, I
think
have.
like my TV isn't small, but because like where I sit on my bed makes it small. I think maybe if it had been on a bigger screen, I might have noticed. So I might
Maybe.
have to watch on our family room screen or something to get all those little details. Because now I wish I had seen those because that's stuff I would normally would have seen. But like honestly, love that she's wearing those hoops because that's awesome. Also, love that Uhura just like immediately hits on Spock. She's like, I don't give a F. Like, I'm gonna hit on you. That's like the first thing that she does. And so that was one of the things I was like, oh hell yeah. Like I love this. Like, love this for you. Love that you're taking the initiative and he's just like clueless. Which makes me wonder like how far along things are with them already. And so that's why I'm like, wish I could have more backstory, but you know,
Yeah.
it's fine. Starts it off strong.
There were that was an interesting scene, and then there are a couple of scenes that just I don't know that they would. I don't think they'd get made today, like the
Yeah.
scenes with the dudes in overalls in the hallway when Janice Rand goes past. I don't think that that
Oh
would be
yeah.
something that you would put in today.
No.
Um,
Absolutely not. I wrote that one down. I was like, absolutely not. Um
so Star Trek, there are a lot of instances where Star Trek was very ahead of its time, but there's also some parts where it's still, you know, for the age, it is what it is. Like it was made in the 60s. They don't have the same sensibilities about that kind of stuff that we have today.
no, definitely not. It's funny cuz like that's how the episode started off. It's like this is his old flame. You know, it's like, "Oh, should bring her flowers." And then like that comment in the hallway, but like honestly wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was going to be like, "Oh, there's going to be some like cringe, you know, essentially misogynistic stuff in here." But not that bad.
I
Like,
think
you know,
the only
there's definitely
other
been worse stuff, you know, more recent in time
yeah,
and
the
still
only
to
other
this
one
day.
the only other one that really jumped out at me was Crater's line in the beginning where he's talking to them. He's like, "I enjoy solitude, but for a woman, you understand, of course." I was like, "Bro."
Which also I was like, I don't get that. Like, unless I don't know. There's obviously a bunch of different ways you can take it, but
Yeah.
I was just like, what? Like I thought maybe he just referred to women being more like social creatures or
Maybe it
whatever.
might
But
have been
like,
a one of the things of the time period, like not understanding as much introverts versus extroverts
yeah,
like we do today.
probably. You know, but that was also the time like women, you know, couldn't really say much. So
Yeah.
that's why they were more introverted or came across that way. So, God forbid, woman speaks up for herself. How dare? How very dare. Um, I put at I did find it funny though when he was like, "Oh, she looks like someone from the pleasure planet." I was just like, "I want to go to that planet."
Wrigley's Pleasure
That's cool.
Planet. I wrote that down with a question mark. I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard of that. I don't know if that ever comes up again.
And I
But it
love how
was
it's
interesting.
mentioned in
Yeah.
the first episode. Like,
In like the first 5-10 minutes of the first episode.
yeah. I was just like, "Oh, wow, okay." Um, I can't remember what this refers to. Maybe you'll remember, but oh, I think it was Spock's. I put weird ass earpiece.
Yeah, Bluetooth before Bluetooth was a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was yeah shaped weird. And
Uhura
I feel
wears
like
the
it's all
same
coming.
Ahura wears the same thing a lot throughout the series because she's the communications officer, and that's essentially
Mm,
supposed to signify it's a communications device. I don't know why it's an earpiece. It just comes
mm,
over for that person to hear what's going on comms, so the rest of the bridge doesn't have to hear it. But yeah, it's like
yeah.
it's very much like a weird Bluetooth headset before that was even a thing.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I also liked the line when um Nancy's with McCoy and he's like, "Oh, like, don't you have a husband?" She's like, "Yeah, but I like your feelings better." I'm like,
Yeah,
"What?" Like, I get that you're trying to say anything, but that was just like such a funny line to me. Um sorry. I don't know, like, I was just like, there's so many different ways to interpret that, like, his feelings for her or, like, your vibe, like, what are you trying to say with this? I just it seemed a little out of place,
I took it as
more than
part of
anything.
like the telepathic aspect. Like
Mm,
she was literally the creature, because it turned into a number of different genders. Uh,
yeah, they.
I think the creature was literally like reading McCoy's mind, so was literally feeling what he was feeling, and his memories of Nancy are very positive.
Mm, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I like the answer. I wrote down always with the truth serum. There's
Yeah,
always truth serum in everything. I feel like, I feel like that's a pretty big trope, even in what is it, nonfiction
yeah.
or fiction. I guess it's still fiction because there is technically some type of truth serum, but
Sodium
you know,
penthol.
there we go. um, oh, and then oh my god, the slapping scene at the
Oh,
end. I was
Spock just
dying.
going off.
It's like, would this be Nancy if I was doing this to her? And I'm just like, I mean, she would have some kind of reaction, right? But like, it was just so funny and just like her just taking it.
That and talking about physical stuff like that, Kirk and McCoy struggling for the phaser was just kind of ridiculous. And
Yeah, that.
go ahead,
Go ahead.
when they're on the planet going after Crater, and Kirk's like doing his ridiculous army crawl on the ground through the sand, like,
Uh
and his run, his like zigzag run, it was cracking me up too.
I know. Some of it is just so of its time, but kind of fun to see how things were back then and can laugh at them. But like I would be very it'd be really fun to, teleport myself and time travel myself back into that time and watch this from that lens. Maybe
Yeah,
one day we will be able to.
maybe.
Um but yeah, maybe by the time we're completely done with this
Yeah,
podcast, they will have discovered time travel by then. Cuz yeah, I'm just like, how did this look to people? Like, did people back then be like, "Oh, that's weird. That's out of place?" And I know I'll have to ask my dad because he's not like super geeky, although like I've kind of turned him on to some geeky things, but I never thought he had watched Star Trek back in the day, but apparently he did. Apparently he did watch some of it. So I'll have to ask him
I think a lot
about
of
those
people
things.
who were alive at that time like watched it. I don't know that there was much on TV. Um,
Yeah,
Not like
I'm
there is
very
now.
curious. I'm very curious about that because yeah, they obviously didn't have any options, so I'm curious how it was received by people being a sci-fi series cuz like I don't know, up until maybe 10 years ago, like that's been labeled as like, oh, you're a nerd or you're a geek
Yeah.
if you're watching stuff like that. Like, I would never watch that. But like, if you really didn't have that many shows to watch, you must have watched it. And I think also probably the serialized aspect of it, where it's the same kind of concept each episode, I'm sure also hooked people in more.
Hmm.
But yeah, very, very curious about that.
Um, the only other thing I have about the episode I thought was interesting, it's the credits had scenes from future episodes in them, and that used to be a really common thing.
Oh,
I
interesting.
don't I
I did
don't
not
know
realize
of
that.
any shows that do that anymore. Like end credits are usually, a particular design, but this was just the credits over stills from future episodes.
Mm. I don't think I watched the credits through.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking of it. Rupsh. Next time I'll look for that. But I guess that makes sense. It's like in a way saying next time on the show, let's just show these pictures, which is kind of what Mando does, but not of future episodes. They do the like
Yeah, they're
concept
the
artwork, which I
yeah.
think is really cool of the episode
Um
itself. Um I do have some that's what they said though.
okay. We forgot
um
to talk about this in our breakdown, but
Yeah, we don't have to, but I happen to do it for this
go ahead.
episode. Some are better than others. Okay. Nervous, Dr. McCoy, and let Plum examine me all alone. Quite quite warm in here, isn't it? The good surgeon will enjoy poking and prodding us with his arcane machinery. Open your mouth. Stop thinking with your glands. Nancy, Nancy will take care of everything. Fill me in. um, I think I might have written this down wrong, but if it was Nancy, could she take this?
Oh,
Something
Spock.
like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, with the slapping.
Those are definitely in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. We'll have to we can maybe alternate those next time.
Yeah. Um, I don't have anything else about the episode.
Okay.
Again, it's watchable.
Favorite yeah, favorite moments or
Um,
lines.
I can't think of any aside from the ones now that you've just read all those out. I'm like, those are all great. Um,
Yeah.
I can't think of any particular lines that stuck out to me, but the
I think
things I
quite
remember the most and enjoyed the most were kind of the silly stuff, like Kirk's zigzag run through the ruins,
yeah.
um, the army crawl, the ridiculous struggle for the phaser. There were some interesting
Yeah.
dynamics between Kirk and McCoy where like they were friends they until Kirk needed to be the boss and he flipped into that real quick.
Yeah.
Like the stop thinking with your glands comment.
Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah, I think the slapping scene definitely stands out the most for me. It's just so funny. And then the quite warm here, isn't it? So good. Um yeah. I think the next thing is episode trivia.
Yes, I have some episode trivia from Memory Alpha. Um, so as far as, and I mentioned this a little bit, as far as why this was the premiere episode, there was a big paragraph on Memory Alpha about it. So if you want more information, go check out the entry for the Man Trap on Memory Alpha. But the gist of it is the Man Trap won out as the first episode to be aired because its straightforward action plot was not considered too exotic. It had the advantage of a monster to thrill the viewers, and it fulfilled the series' Strange New Worlds concept.
Hmm. I guess.
The
I'll have to
other,
see I'll have to see as the episodes go. But I'm just like the creature like you don't actually see the creature until the very end.
yeah, like you
But
don't,
also that I guess that works in a way, for very broad audience to not show the creature right away because, you know,
Mm-hmm.
people are very turned off by those things. They're like, ew, gross. No, I don't want to watch that. So
Because we
I
only
get
really
that.
see it at the end, right before it
Yeah.
dies, right? That's the only time we
Yep.
see its actual form.
Yep. It's like a
Good,
swamp thing.
good old salt vampire.
Yeah.
The other trivia bit I took from Memory Alpha was that as this was as the very first episode aired by NBC on September 8th, 1966, the Man Trap was also the premiere for Star Trek as a whole. However, it was not NBC who would boast the world premiere, but rather the Canadian network CTV, which had actually aired the Man Trap 2 days before NBC did. So the world premiere
What?
of Star Trek was by a Canadian television network. They aired it 2 days before NBC aired it.
Wow. Canadians just always wanting things first, I guess. Always coming first. Those damn Canadians.
Dole's gonna have comments about
Hmm.
that. Um,
Oh, he will. I don't know if he watches Star Trek, though.
I don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out. We'll make him watch
Yeah.
this. Uh,
Obviously, we know about Star Wars.
yes. Sometimes
If you
those
don't
I
know, real quick, if you don't know who we're talking about, this is Ryan Dole from Toy Anxiety and Gotham City Tonight. And if you don't know who that is already, don't know how you found us.
um
He's pretty infamous.
uh you made me forget what I was going to say. I think I was going to
I'm
transition
so sorry.
into that. That'll bring us to our spoilers without context. These are fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
we're going to show now. Kayla and I each created one for this episode. Do you want to do yours first?
Sure.
So we'll put
Go
that up
for it.
on the screen.
Hmm.
I like the Stonehenge and the plum. Took me longer than
Yeah.
I wanted to get the plum.
Yeah, I was telling you this earlier, but it was hard to find a picture of a plum where you could tell it was a plum, so I kind of gave up after a little bit, and I was just like, there. Because the plum, the salts, and then, like, the facial cupping, I needed something to show, like, red dots on face, so I think I searched, like, face cupping or something like that, but yeah, then the Stonehenge one I was kind of like I don't know, the whole landscape of the planet just really stood out to me,
Yeah,
and it took me a second to get there, and then I was like, "Oh, yeah, it kinda looks like Stonehenge." So, had to throw that one in there too.
and then this is the one that I created. This was a very sweaty episode.
Yes.
So
Which, yeah, it's interesting how they were all sweaty except for Nancy.
and nobody questioned it except for us, the viewers.
Yeah. Yes.
And then of course a salt lick because salt.
Mhm.
Um,
Gotta
the
have that salt.
the man
Take a
eating.
drink every time Nancy or the professor, asked for salt.
You know, you'd be dead by the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Um, and then the man eating plant for Sulu's
Mhm.
hand puppet plant,
Yep.
and of course I couldn't not think of Among Us and the imposter and being sus.
Yes. I literally wrote in my notes so many times like, "Oh, they're sus of this and sus of that," and I was just like, "Oh, friggin' Among Us has just, like, become part of the zeitgeist so much."
Out of
But
nowhere
also the
too.
fact that it was, like, on a spaceship,
Yeah.
that just, like, adds to that level of Among Us-ness.
Um, so do you want to rank the episode?
Yes. Do you wanna go over the ranks again?
Yes. So we're not rating episodes from like a 1 to 10 or 5 star. We're just ranking them. We're giving them a rank from Starfleet. So if it is the rank of ensign, you can basically skip the episode. It's fine. If it's rank of lieutenant, if you have time, watch it, but it's not essential. Commander, you should try to watch. It's a pretty good episode. It's definitely a watchable episode. And then captain ranked episodes are essential. Like if you're going to watch Star Trek, watch these episodes.
Mhm.
So what do you want me to go first, or do you want to go? I'm interested to hear your rank before I give mine.
Yeah, I guess I should go first. I would say somewhere between lieutenant and commander. Um, the only reason why I lean more commander is because it is the first episode.
Yeah.
That is the only reason. Otherwise, I would say you don't necessarily need to watch it. I don't know. I think as we watch more, that opinion might change in terms of, plot and character development and if it's really necessary. So it's kind of hard for me to say because I don't have anything to compare it to yet. But yeah, so somewhere in the middle. So probably I would say Commander just cuz it's the first episode. If it wasn't the first episode, I would say Lieutenant.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would rank it Commander as well, primarily because it's a piece of history. It's the first episode of Star Trek, a franchise that has run for more than 50 years that aired. So I think it's as a piece of history, it's something that you should watch. If you're going to watch Star Trek, watch
Yeah.
it. It was the first episode ever released, and it's not a bad episode. That's not to say that it's not a watchable
No,
episode. Um,
it's entertaining for sure.
yeah,
Like we were talking about before, we've both watched it 3 times and it never felt like a chore to watch it again.
yeah. Um, if it wasn't the first episode, it might be something where if you don't have time to watch it, don't you don't have to feel like you're missing out. But I think because
Yeah.
it's like we said, it's the first episode ever, that really gives
Yeah.
it maybe an unfair advantage that gives it the rank of commander. So we
Yeah.
give we give a unanimous rank of commander to the man trap.
Mhm.
So our next episode that we cover here on Trek Retrek will be Charlie X.
Not to be confused with Charlie XCX, the band.
I I'm not I
And
don't
I
know
am
that. So
I am aging myself right now.
and I'm aging
Honestly, it's
myself
probably
because
it's probably for people even younger than me, but I happen to know them. Only because they've collabed with some artists that I do like. So, yeah, that's
okay.
about it.
I think
I'm
that covers
excited
it.
though.
Yeah,
I'm excited to like have more of the world building and character development and be able to compare better. um
it's been a
yeah, and
while
then
since it's been a while since I've watched this, but it's a very different episode. I'll be interested
oh,
to see what you think about this
interesting.
episode compared to the man trap.
Yeah. Yeah, guess we'll have to see. Stay
Yeah.
tuned to find out.
All right. That's going to do it for the inaugural voyage of Trek Retrek.
Mhm. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe and make sure to smack that like button, not just tap it, smack it.
Really smack it like Spock
Smack
smacked
it real
Nancy.
good.
Just
Yes.
like
Oh my god. Oh
and
my god.
do all the YouTube things. Comment, bell
Yes.
icon, all that YouTube stuff.
Mhm.
Until
Get
next
those
time,
notifications.
live long and prosper.
Bye, y'all.